What's up, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of NeoVintage News. Now, if you guys haven't noticed already, the podcast is back in full swing now on the channel, going up every Monday, with the show going up every Saturday. And now that the podcast is up and running, we guys get to see the very clearly defined roles each show will serve on this channel. So I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. If you want to just be filled in with the major stories of the week and keep yourself up to date, the new show, I got you. That's what we're going to be doing here. If you would like deeper discussions, that's where I would say you should go to the podcast, because me and Steve definitely play around with a lot of different ideas, brainstorm, and discuss some real high concept stuff and go deep into the game industry. So depending on what kind of content you favor, maybe both, I would suggest that both shows definitely serve their own purpose and take them however you want. So we got a lot of stories this week, and we could just jump into it. So you guys know I'm a major retro game fan. I know a lot of you guys on the channel are as well. That's why the Video Games Monthly videos do so well. That's why you guys love talking about the Intellivision Amico last week. So this week we're covering another kind of retro console type situation that's going on, which is the Playdate. We have an update for this console. Now, last year, a new handheld console was announced and revealed. It's called the Playdate. It has pre-installed games, a black and white screen, and a hand crank that some developers will use as a control mechanism. Now we know that there are 250 dev kits out in the wild as we speak. Multiple games have been shown off, and I'm going to link them all down below so you can see the different games and the different experiences you'll be able to get on this console. And they're actually showing off a port of Doom running, which is incredible. I had no clue that something like that would be running on this kind of console. But yeah, man, it kind of takes that whole meme of like Doom running on everything along with like Skyrim and stuff like that to the most, literal extent that yes, this is going to have a port of Doom in it. More details on the Playdate will be promised soon, including a release date and a list of titles that you're going to get at launch. So this is a console I'm actually really excited about. And I know on paper it sounds a little strange, in like 2020, 2021, to get a new handheld console with a black and white screen and pre-installed games. It's like, why would you even ever want that? But once you get deeper into it and see what they're doing here, they're doing something very creative. And the older I get, the more time I spend learning about the game industry, the more things can feel kind of like on a cycle and boring, and you're seeing the same trends happening over and over again. So somebody kind of dipping their foot into the water and playing around with conventions like controls and stuff like that, and just trying to do something different, it hits different, you know what I mean? And I really respect what they're trying to do here, and I really want this console. It looks amazing, so if I can get my hands on it, I would love to do that so I can give you guys a review and kind of give you guys my thoughts. But yeah, man, I'm really excited about what Playdate is doing, and I'm gonna keep my eyes out for more information. Once we get the release date, I'll be sure to keep you guys in the loop about that. But yeah, they're doing some really dope things, and I wanted to highlight that a little bit. Next one's a pretty big story, and it's possibly something about the Halo development cycle being a little bit in turmoil. So a report has surfaced suggesting that Halo Infinite's development and recent delay have been affected by outsourcing. With the upcoming Halo TV show apparently a significant distraction, 343 has responded, saying that 343 Industries has a devoted transmedia team that is working with Showtime on the creation and production of the Halo TV show, and that group is separate from the Halo Infinite development team. These are two completely independent projects with dedicated teams and leadership that do not impact one another. So basically they're pushing back and saying, like, listen, the show is not what's delaying this game, because these are completely different teams that don't necessarily impact the production cycle of one another. There was also reports from Thurrott.com, where this story initially broke, that the Halo delay can be partly due to a significant portion of the game being outsourced by third-party contractors. And when you deal with games on this scale, this is not necessarily non-commonplace. They do outsource some degree of development, but apparently with this, the coordination between many of the different companies working on Infinite has been rough at best. So they're seeming to have a little bit of a continuity and coordination issue working together with all these different, companies working with one another. So it seems like a tricky situation. And again, I would like to stress to you guys to take this with a grain of salt. Again, this is 343 definitely pushed back against the assertion that the Halo TV show has anything to do with the delay, but the whole allegations of this having to do with outsourcing and them not jiving well together. Again, this is a third party kind of speaking on behalf. This is people kind of leaking information and stuff like that. So we don't know with 100% certainty the validity of the story. So again, take it with a grain of salt. Who knows? They might come out and be like, this is absolutely, nonsense. It has nothing to do with it. It's all COVID related. That could be honestly the case, but it's something to keep your eye out on as well as we get more information on Halo Infinite. It's a tricky thing. Again, this was a game that people were really banking on launching with the Series X, and with this getting pushed off, a lot of people are asking like, what is going on? Does it have anything to do with the quality of the gameplay reveal that we had and people not receiving it too well? Did it have anything to do with that? Are they trying to do something very different here and it's not working well with the tech maybe? So there's a lot of speculation as to what's going on with Halo Infinite. But for right now, I would say take everything with a grain of salt and take official statements as kind of gospel right now until we get formal confirmation from like Phil Spencer or Microsoft. So I guess we can move on to the next story, which is about the Nintendo Indie Showcase. So Nintendo aired its first Indie World stream since March earlier this week, showcasing a variety of new and well-known indie games that are coming to Switch later this year and later on. So this is important to note. With Nintendo, their first-party output has been a little bit slower compared to the previous years for Switch. They have the big, obviously, Animal Crossing, and then they have Paper Mario. They have other things on the slate, I'm sure, as well, and they have a whole bunch of third-party relationships. So they're definitely still holding on to that kind of like indie thing, which is really awesome to see Nintendo pushing all these games that otherwise may go under the radar. So I'm going to list all the games that they announced, and keep in mind that some of these are, yes, the first time we've ever seen these. Some of these are like Switch ports, so they existed on other platforms but are finally coming to Switch. So we can start out with Hades, Hypnospace Outlaw, Spiritfarer, which is also on Game Pass, which I just played too. Awesome game. Garden Story, Subnautica in the Subnautica Below Zero version, Takeshi and Hiroshi, people are really excited about that. Raji and Ancient Epic, Bear and Breakfast, A Short Hike, Card Shark, Torchlight 3, Manifold Garden, Evergate, Haven, Going Under, The Red Lantern, Unrailed, Struggling, Inmost, She Dreams Elsewhere, Grindstone, Goner 2, and then they're actually updating Untitled Goose Game with a multiplayer update, which is really, really awesome. So this was a really dope conference, seeing all these indie relationships still being very strong with the Nintendo ecosystem. That's always the concern, is obviously with PlayStation this last generation. In the PS3 years, they were very, very close with a lot of indie developers, and a lot of indie developers expressed frustration going into the PS4 generation that Sony didn't really have a vested interest in pushing their games at all. So they're kind of just dropping onto the e-store with no fanfare, no nothing, no marketing, and they were having trouble, moving units maybe in the same way that they had in the PS3 generation where Sony was really pushing them. So a lot of these indie developers started fostering a relationship with people who would push their games in a very foremost fashion, which was Nintendo. And it's cool that seeing that 3 years into the generation, going I guess on 4 years at this point in March, that Nintendo's still, going full steam ahead and pushing these indie games. So for anybody who's saying, hey, the Switch ain't got no games, where's the Switch games? Hey, there's lots of indie games coming. There's lots of third-party games as well. And then the first party, I'm sure they're going to drop one more thing maybe before the year's end that they haven't unveiled yet, additional to maybe like Pikmin, the deluxe version. So lots going on Switch. Keep your eyes out on that. Next story is kind of something that's legit, maybe not, but again, take it with a grain of salt. So a game listing on Amazon for a Nintendo Switch port for The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword has been found. Wario64 on Twitter, shout out him. Gotta follow his account. He has amazing deals that I've gotten on games. I've been able to secure like pre-orders on God knows how many stuff because of him, so shout out him. Found this listing briefly on Amazon UK. So for you guys who have been in the game industry long enough, you guys know that Amazon, UK, France, all these different countries always are like leaking stuff. Some turn out to be legit, some turn out not to be. Sometimes they're placeholder stuff. You'll see like on Walmart, they'll put placeholder for games that definitely do not exist, and it's kind of just like weird background stuff that's going on, possibly prepping the digital ecosystem for something that may or may not come and that they think on their end may come at some point. So again, take it with a grain of salt, but that's very interesting to see a Skyward Sword Switch port, because this one would be very different than some of the other Switch ports we've seen, like the Wii U to Switch ones. Obviously, a tremendous amount of development and work would have to go into Skyward Sword to make it work, because for you guys who don't know, this was a Wii title that had an incredible amount of motion gameplay in it, and that's one of the things that turns me off personally to it. I just really don't like motion controls. That's really not my thing. In this game, it's like core and it's super built into the game. There's points where you're walking with Link and you have to remain stable, and you're using the Wiimote to be stable, and you do action by swiping it and stuff like that. So it's innately built into the game. So for them to make it work on Switch, they would probably have to completely change the control mechanism. They can obviously use some stuff like the gyroscope with the Switch like they did in Breath of the Wild, but traditional motion thing would be a little tougher. Now, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but because for you guys who don't know, earlier to the Switch's launch, there was a game called World of Goo. And what they did was they had like a little cursor in the middle of the screen, and you kind of calibrate that in relation with the Joy-Con in relation to the console. And that's how they kind of mimicked motion controls, and World of Goo worked on Switch, Wii as well. So there is a way to do it if they really wanted to stick with the motion controls, but it would have to require some new kinds of calibrations, playing around with the conventions. But again, the assertion that they have to go to traditional controls completely with a Switch port is not necessarily true. The Switch does have tech that can allow them to kind of backdoor reverse engineer some ways to be able to play Skyward Sword in a pretty close manner. Not exactly, but comparable, I would say, to least. And a Switch port of this would be awesome because I love Skyward Sword. I do have a copy of it personally, but I'm not really a big fan of the Wii. I don't really like motion controls. So if they are able to make a version of this game that could be at least played conventionally in addition to motion controls if you want that, I think that would be awesome, and that would give me a chance to experience that amazing story, because Skyward Sword, in my opinion, has one of the best Zelda stories, and it obviously takes place way in the past and stuff like that. So, yeah, I would love to see if this is true, but I'll keep my eyes out and see if we have any updates on this. Yeah, so we have a follow-up from last week's stories regarding Control. So we have some statements responding to a lot of the controversy that's been going on. For you guys that don't know, Control is having an Ultimate Edition that's coming out relatively soon, I believe. If it's not out right now, it's coming out very soon, end of August. And this version has a free next-gen upgrade. There was a little bit of controversy because a year ago the original version came out, and that version's not going to have a next-gen upgrade. So a lot of people who bought the game at launch or before this Ultimate Edition are feeling a little bit of burn because, hey, this game is not that old and we're not going to get the next-gen upgrade, and you're going to make us fork out another $40 to get that next-gen upgrade. So we finally have some statements from 505 Games. So they released a blog post that explains why the base game of Control won't have free next-gen upgrades. 505 Games says it understands how this might upset some players, but that these players will still be able to play the 2019 edition of Control and each expansion on the new platforms. So it seems like they're referring to some kind of like backwards compatibility with the Xbox Series X and the PS5. And with the story last week, especially on the podcast, I did express this specifically. Like, okay, I know you're not getting a next-gen upgrade, but this version should work on next-gen as well. So that's important to know. And it seems like they're confirming, like, yes, your launch version that you get won't get an upgrade for next-gen, but it will be fully playable on next-gen. So if your concerns are only playing this game on the PS5 or the Xbox Series X, no matter what version of the game, you'll be able to do that. I guess maybe the Ultimate Edition is just going to have some upgrades, maybe some higher res textures, some better running stuff or stuff like that, which again doesn't end the controversy, because then it feels like some people are going to be like, you're going to lock people out of better performance based, with a $40 paywall, I suppose. But they got more here. It says, to bring Control to the next generation consoles in any form, we had to make some difficult decisions. Those came with creating the simplified Control Ultimate Edition product that we have today. That we took a while responding doesn't mean that we haven't been listening. We are sorry we couldn't meet everybody's expectation, and we hope that you can continue to support Control. The publisher said that it spent several months exploring the possible launch options for Control Ultimate Edition, and that no decision was made lightly. It said that it was difficult to upgrade its current user base to next gen with full parity across platforms with our year-old game. So it doesn't seem like they're reversing course by any means, but rather explaining their kind of thought process behind it. Again, some people are going to be mad no matter what they do in this situation. They're kind of in a weird, tricky situation. It seems like they're very adamant and not offering this next-gen upgrade to the traditional game, which is going to obviously piss some people off. But again, if your only concern is being able to play Control in some way, your version of Control in some way on next-gen, that's going to be very possible and no issues there. I guess it's just the Ultimate Edition is going to have some better performance or whatever that they're patching into there or releasing with this version that you won't have access to, unfortunately, at least for free. So yeah, that's just a little update for you guys. Next one, Black Ops Cold War is finally confirmed. So the next Call of Duty game is officially called Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. They posted a trailer that includes real footage from the Cold War era of history. I'm including it right here. All the while using a voiceover from KGB defector Yuri Bezmenov as he explains the tool of fighting Cold War. So this is going to be developed by Treyarch and Raven. So that's important to know, because for you guys who don't know, the Call of Duty franchise is broken up by different developers depending on what whose turn it is in the cycle. And this time it's going to be Treyarch and Raven. For you guys who don't know, like Modern Warfare is done by like Infinity War, and they kind of all play. Modern Warfare 3 I think was done by like Raven. So different teams work on a different year, and this is why they kind of have like a 3-year turnaround. So I understand a lot of people are like, oh, Call of Duty is like annualized. It doesn't mean that they're turning out a new Call of Duty. The same team is turning out a new game every single year. They're working closer to 2.5 to 3 year cycles actually. So yeah, this was rumored some time ago. So we kind of knew this was a thing, but we hadn't had formal confirmation yet. So yeah, Black Ops Cold War is a thing. Very excited about this personally. I'm one of those weird dudes who play Call of Duty for the campaign. I know a vast majority of people play it only for like the multiplayer, or maybe dabble in the campaign a little bit. I only really play the campaigns. I love first-person shooters, but I don't really have any wish to like drop into a lobby and compete with people. I kind of like a little bit of plot there, a little bit more tactical gameplay. And a little bit of story personally. That's kind of how I like to experience it. So I'll definitely be picking up this game to play the storyline, because I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed Modern Warfare storyline as well. And it's cool to see Modern Warfare kind of reboot. And now it seems like with Black Ops going back to the Cold War, this is kind of a bit of a soft reboot as well. But I don't know if it's going to be a reboot of continuity as Modern Warfare was. I can't speak to that quite yet. But I'm going to keep my eyes out as we get more information for you guys who are Call of Duty fans. This one's a pretty big story. We have the new Xbox UI unveiled. So Microsoft showcased the new Xbox Series X dashboard in a recent video, showing how the dashboard streamlines everything to allow gamers into their games quicker than ever before. It's faster, it uses 40% less memory, and simplifies the game sharing, clips, and screenshots by utilization of their phone. So it seems like they're kind of going for a unified ecosystem in terms of a UI that works really well together, including your phone to help share clips and stuff like that. And the UI is supposed to run much better, which I'm really excited for. To begin with, I love the way the UI looks. I love what they're doing there, so shout out to them. I love everything about that. I like the app version too. It looks really clean. It running faster is probably the biggest sell for me personally. I use my Xbox pretty regularly, not only for gaming, but also media consumption as well. I use it to like watch anime and DVDs and stuff like that. So I know firsthand how slow the UI can run sometimes. So the idea that with the next gen upgrade, that's going to be fixed, that's tremendous. My only hope is by the end of next gen that it doesn't swamp up again, because again, things get bloated, they play around with a whole bunch of things, and next thing you know, your super fast UI is no longer super fast by the end of the generation because you played around with it so much. I feel like in many ways the PS4 had suffered from this as well, where I feel like the PlayStation 4 UI ran way faster at launch. Maybe I'm tripping, but I feel like it ran way faster at launch, and as they played around with different themes and things and stuff like that, by the end of the generation, that thing is just super laggy and no good. So I'm hoping with the PS5 and the Series X that they can fix a lot of those issues and keep those fixed. The next one to end off our stories is the Apple versus Fortnite update. So we have more information. I told you guys this was going to be a continuous story and a very important story for the game industry. I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on this story and seeing it as kind of like a little petty beef between massive corporate entities, which in many ways it is. But this is literally kind of combating monetization strategies in digital ecosystems that's going to ripple down to every single developer that's on these ecosystems in terms of what you can do, in terms of how much Apple gets a cut of things, what is allowed, what is not, is this fair practice, is this not. This is an important thing that is going to affect everyone who uses these game ecosystems, whether you're a player, whether you're a developer, whether you're one of these big corporate entities. So Epic is attempting to bring Fortnite back to the App Store using a temporary restraining order after Apple banned the game earlier this month. Apple promptly responded to Epic's move, asking the judge presiding over the case to block the request. This is reported by NBC News. The temporary restraining order, if granted, would allow Fortnite to return to the App Store against Apple's wishes, along with the controversial direct payment system. So pretty much if that's granted, that's going to be very advantageous to Epic. Before the lawsuit had even been resolved, In a new legal filing, Apple claims that Epic has no basis for a temporary restraining order, accusing Epic of bringing all alleged injury upon itself, citing in particular Epic's belligerent behavior with its hashtag Free Fortnite campaign and 1984 parody video, which is a reference to the old Macintosh commercial. So I'm going to link the story down below. There's a lot more information that I think you guys, if this story interests you in it at all, should kind of parse through and get more out of. There's a whole bunch there. There's a little bit too much to include here. But basically, it seems like Epic going for the restraining order, which will pretty much at least temporarily put them in a position to operate with their kind of reduced price VBuck, where they Apple does not get its 30% cut off of the purchases. But what Apple is doing is basically that very bold approach that Epic is taking. Because again, for you guys who have not been paying attention, if you go into Fortnite right now, it's a very bold F Apple kind of sentiment going on right now. They have events around it and everything. They had this video thing. So they're being very open and honest with this conflict that they're having with Apple. And in many ways, we kind of live in this social media age where public sentiment and social media campaigns and stuff like that shape policy. It shapes the world we live in many examples. There have been people who have been arrested and different things that have gone on just from kind of social media pressure. So it seems like Epic is trying to take that approach to kind of force Apple's hand by getting on them, by making their entire player base kind of hate Apple in a very indirect and fun Fortnite type way. And Apple is going to try to use that argument and be like, look at their strategy. Everything bad that's going on is by their own doing, because look at their whole approach. So they're trying to use that bold approach to kind of hit back at them, while Epic, on the other hand, is trying to file a restraining order and saying that their practice are super wrong, should not be allowed by any capacity. Ultimately, we'll see what the ruling is, and I'm assuming by next week maybe we'll have our answer regarding that. But it's a very interesting story to keep your eye out for. And again, we're going to have a deeper conversation about this conflict on this week's podcast, so keep your eye out for that. So I guess we can move on to the second section of this. There's not too much to talk about this section because, again, I haven't been playing a whole bunch of new games. So what I've been playing, Final Fantasy 13, I've talked about it the past 3 weeks or so like that. You guys know Final Fantasy games are very long. This does not have a speed up version like 7, 8, and 9 do have on Switch. So I'm playing this at regular speed and stuff like that. So that's going to take time. I won't waste your guys' time with that. The next one is new Super Lucky's Tale. Now this just dropped on current gen consoles. I'm playing it on Xbox through Game Pass. No additional expenses there. So very excited about that. And I gotta say, I'm really, really enjoying it. For you guys who don't know, this is kind of like a mascot platformer in the vein of what you'd see from like the Spyros, the Banjo-Kazooies from like the Rare era on Nintendo. And it's definitely in line with that. And it's kind of a new game harkening back to that nostalgic style. In a similar vein to maybe you'd see A Hat in Time, for example, which is a game that I absolutely adored. And this game falls right in line with that, and it's really, really solid. I enjoy the platforming. It's very clean. The visuals are beautiful. I love pretty much everything about it. It's very simplistic. There's nothing too crazy there. It's pretty much a collectathon. You're collecting coins and different letters that spell out lucky, and you're trying to get all these different things while completing these objectives for each level. I didn't get super deep into it, but I kind of wanted to dip my toes into it to familiarize myself with what they were doing here, and I think they did a fantastic job. I think the original Lucky's Tale came out, or Super Lucky's Tale came out in like 2016, I believe, and it was closer to like a VR title, I believe, or something like that. And I know a Switch version came out, and now it's finally coming to Xbox One, and I believe also PS4. So keep your eye out on this for this, and if you enjoy those 90s mascot platformers, this is definitely going to be in your wheelhouse, and I think you'll really enjoy it. And I don't think it's super expensive as well, and I believe you can platinum this close to 10 to 15 hours, so it's not a massive undertaking or anything like that. So if you're looking for something fun to kind of like kill time with, I highly recommend this game. But my general game recommendation of a week is another new game that's dropped on Xbox specifically, which is Battletoads. Now, for you guys who don't know, this is an excellent game going back, I believe, to the early 90s, probably at this point. I don't have a copy of it, unfortunately. I would love a copy of Battletoads, but it's a little expensive for what I understand. And so this is kind of like a reboot for current gen consoles. And I dropped, on Game Pass, and I'm having a great time with it. I think it's really, really solid entries. I see some people having kind of like middling opinions on it, but I think it's really, really well done. I am by many metrics a guy who really, really loves visuals. Castlevania, excellent pixel art. I love really nice pixel art. I love drawn art, and that's what really gravitated me to this game, is just seeing the art style they're going for. And obviously it reminded me a lot of like the newer stuff you'd see out of like Nickelodeon and stuff like that. And it's very well animated, which is very interesting because recently we got Streets of Rage 4, I believe it was, and that also had kind of like a hand-drawn type look to it. So this, as another beat 'em up, kind of immediately harkened back to that. But I think the gameplay styles are very different. It's very quick, it's very kinetic. You swap through different things. Every character has its own different like fighting style and stuff like that. Different, difficulty settings, so you can choose on one of 3 difficulty settings. I played a little bit on each difficulty setting, and I think they're all pretty well balanced in my opinion. So if you're afraid that beat 'em ups are a little too difficult for you, don't worry, the easy version is more than easy enough to get through, no problem. You could get through it probably without dying at all, at least for the first few stages. And the hard one is definitely going to give you a challenge, so if you really would like that challenge, it's really challenging. It's by no means as challenging as what you'd see on like the Streets of Rage really hard versions. But yeah, Battletoads I think is really, really well done. And again, if you have an Xbox, this is on Game Pass. You have no excuse not to jump into it. Give it, an hour or so, see what you think of it. But I think they did a fantastic job on this game. Have not beat it, so I can't speak to like the later levels and see how that gets. I don't know how well it holds up, but I know the little interludes that they have in the little drawn sections are really well done. I wouldn't say that by any means the writing or the humor in it is well done. It's campy, it's clunky, but in many ways I feel like that kind of harkens back to the style of this game, that it's like they're literally trying to take that early 90s Genesis, Super Nintendo era humor and just inject it into the modern day, because these in many ways are characters displaced from that time. And yeah, it doesn't really jive well because a lot of that humor from that time is corny and doesn't really jive well at all anyways. So in many ways it felt appropriate to me, but I get why some people it wouldn't really resonate with. But I'm fairly familiar with that era's type of humor, and it immediately brought me back. I personally felt like it worked really well, and I really enjoy Battletoads. So yeah, that's my game recommendation of the week, and that's the show for you guys. Again, if you would like to hear me talk in depth about any of these stories here, with exception for maybe a couple that are not going to make into it there, maybe like the Playdate and stuff like that, go check out the podcast, the next episode. I believe it's episode 19. It'll be going up this Monday after this is posted, but if it's after the 24th, then that episode's up already if you're watching this into the future for me. But yeah, this is Jabril from NeoVintage Games. I love you guys. Bye.